Good morning. Good morning on this bright Thursday morning, and it's a gorgeous day. Gorgeous day here in Alabama. I like gorgeous days, always have, and have beautiful weather most of the time here in beautiful downtown Huntsville, Alabama, where I couldn't be happier to be. But today, I want to share with you some things that I think will help you to find the right kind of information. We've been talking about week. We've been talking about facts, the accuracy of facts, those kinds of things. And so today, looks like we may be having a little problem. Make sure things are working here like they're supposed to be. I apologize for the disruption. It looks like we may have had an interruption. Okay, it looks like we're being able to do this. All right, Brent, good to see you. So we're going to talk about three things today. That's kind of my normal. I think three things are plenty of things to talk about in any given day. So we want to talk about where do we get correct information from and how do we go about getting that. And I've had the perfect examples happen to me over the course of this week that have really made this easy for me. But today I want to talk about most important thing, and that is questions. You will not get the right information if you're not asking the right questions. So number one is ask the right questions. Asking the right questions is extremely important. I think sometimes there's a lot of noise that goes on in the world that's intended to distract us from asking the right questions. We've been told a lie. You were told a lie in school. I might as well go ahead and admit it to you now. But you were told a lie. And there's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Those are lies. That's not true. There is such a thing as a bad question. There is such a thing as a dumb question. There are questions that are intended to distract and to demean. And those are not beneficial. They don't help anybody. I'll give you an example. I've seen a lot of effort in several places this week trying to find support for or opposition to a particular Facebook meme that meant absolutely nothing. You're chasing after the wrong thing. And asking the wrong questions and chasing after the wrong things don't really matter. And I've said forever, I never cared about Barack Obama's birth certificate, and I don't care about the national heritage of Kamala Harris. I'll let somebody else deal with that because those facts are not going to change things for me. The most important thing is exactly, John. John says, kind of like, what flavor of ice cream did you get? That was a question that was asked to President Trump was asked to VP Biden when he was getting off the point, what kind of ice cream did you get? That's a question intended to go absolutely nowhere. And a lot of times we ask wrong questions. You'll never get the facts if you ask the wrong questions. In a sales situation, if you're not asking the right questions, then you're not going to get the information that you need in order to make the sale. In a business situation, if I'm investing in a company, I have to ask the right questions. If I don't ask the right questions, then I'm not going to get the information that's necessary for me to be able to make a smart, intelligent decision. So all of those things are involved in making sure that we, number one, ask the right questions. The second thing, and this one is really important. I almost said this one. I didn't mean to say that. This point is really important. Number two is ask the question behind the question. Ask the question behind the question. And I mentioned this yesterday, that one of the things that's not an accurate fact are polls. And the reason why polls are not accurate facts is because we don't know the next question. What was the sample size? Where was that sample taken from? Who was included in that sample size? Those are all the questions behind the question. The question isn't what does the poll say? The question is what was being asked. That's the first question. What was asked on that poll? Because oftentimes what you get in a poll is you get the conclusion, you don't get the question. So you have to ask the question behind the question. What was the sample size? Where was that sample size taken from? Let me tell you something. The time of day that the sample size was taken is extremely important. You need to know those things in order for you to have things that you can operate from. The same thing's true in a sales situation. When I was selling, and I've sold everything you can imagine, when I was selling and I was actively, aggressively selling whatever it was I was selling to the public, when I was doing that, the question behind the question was the most important thing. And I would ask people, if I was selling them spray equipment, I would ask them, how much time do you spend finishing your projects? And they would tell me it takes me a week. What if we could cut that down to a day? Question behind the question. Well, how would you do that? Now we see we've moved behind the question. We got to the next step. We got to the next level. Move through that process in that way. You'll have to ask, number one, you have to ask the right questions. If you're not asking the right questions, you run into trouble. The second thing is always question deeper. You have to ask the questions at a deeper level than just the obvious. Because if you're not asking the question behind the question, you're not going to get the right information. You have to ask the question behind the question. And that art of asking the question behind the question is extremely important. Develop that, and you'll be a winner in everything that you do, because you'll be able to get to the heart of the matter. It's never the first question. It's never even that question like, what flavor ice cream did you get? Or something like that. That's never really the point. The point's try to distract from and move away from. And we spend an awful lot of time and energy chasing those kinds of things rather than getting to the heart of the matter. Because the heart of the matter, the facts, as Don says, the facts, we can't let the facts get in the way of the narrative. And so we have to keep questioning. And number three, having to do with questions, is question everything. Just question everything. Question the source of the information. Question where that came from. Question who was involved in that. Question when somebody says that's been debunked. Show me where. Let me see the evidence that was debunked. Let me give me the evidence of that. I want to see how that happened. Can you share with me what took place there? That's not true. How do you know it's not true? That's the question behind the question, right? You got to dig deeper, and we have to question everything. In the world that we live in today, if we're not questioning everything, we're going to be in trouble. We're just going to be in trouble, because once you peel back the first, second, third layers, then you start to find out what's really there. And if you don't know what's really there, you're going to end up chasing stuff that doesn't really matter. It's not really important. And I'm telling you, you're going to get inundated over the next 2 weeks between now and the time we actually vote. You're going to get inundated with a bunch of stuff, most of which means absolutely nothing, most of which needs to be highly questioned and is very questionable. All right. But when you get bombarded with those things, you have to ask the right question. You have to ask the question behind the question, and you have to learn the art of questioning everything. And just because you're really good at questioning everything doesn't mean you're asking the right questions. Chasing after something that you read on a meme, or trying to support it or debunk it or defact it, or as Facebook's favorite phrase is now, it's been proven to be partially false, and then never show you where or how it was partially false, that doesn't do anything. That accomplishes absolutely nothing. Learn to question everything. In a sales situation, question everything. We had a bad experience with that. Yes, they want you to go down the rabbit hole. That's exactly what happens. I frequently ran into this in sales situation. When I was selling something to someone, they would continue to ask questions that went nowhere. The questions went nowhere. The intention is to distract. I guess maybe if you spend enough time in the sales industry, you understand that questions, bad questions, of which there are many, bad questions, wrong questions, need I say stupid questions? Because I've heard my share of those. I taught middle school. I've heard my share of those. And middle schools where you got taught that you didn't have, there was no such thing as a stupid question. I was a master at it. I could get a teacher distracted so quickly it wasn't even funny. I was a master at it. I learned the art of doing that in 5th grade, getting somebody down the rabbit hole and having them chase off someplace where they didn't belong. But if you don't learn to ask the right questions, you don't learn to ask the question behind the question, or question everything, then we're going to be in trouble. I want people to make informed decisions. I believe that intelligent people will make right decisions if they have the right information. I think it's also entirely possible that they'll chase the wrong stuff. Be really careful. Ask the right questions. Ask them so you get to the question behind the question, and question everything. And doing those 3 things will do the most good for you in pursuing, where do I get good information from? I have to keep questioning what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing. A couple of things that I've started doing, I've been doing now for several years. I've got, unashamedly, I have a lot of distrust of mainstream media, and a lot of the things that come out have later been proven to be false. And so apparently there's no investigative journalism that's going on now. I don't know whether that's because of the rush. See, we have a rush to get information out now. How fast can you tweet this? And then you may discover that the tweet of that was incorrect. So there's a rush to get stuff out. So what happens is that investigations begin to deteriorate. So I have a lack of confidence in the mainstream media, because it's a rush to see who's going to have the breaking news of the day. That's the first thing that's a problem. The next thing is that I'm not sure that they don't have an agenda that is not in your best interest. And I mean your, as in whether you are a Republican or a Democrat. I don't think their agenda is in your best interest. And I think that's we've been moving that direction for some time. The things that were uncovered about the current presidential nominee, the things that were uncovered about him from years ago, were the result of investigative journalists that dug deep. This, like, we can't talk about that today. Why can't we talk about that today? Why can't we take a look at a person's record? That's what we have to make decisions on. But nobody's examining that. What they're instead examining is, what kind of ice cream did he get? That's the level of investigative journalism that we're doing today, and it has to be and has to be questioned. Right? Question everything, has to be questioned. So what I have looked for, I'm not going to tell you where I found it, but what I've looked for is I've looked for people because there's fascinating things going on in our country right now. I've been looking for people who have refused to do a lack of investigative journalism, and have gotten fired because they're great. Those people are great. It's not the mouthpiece. It's not the guy who sat on the news and he anchored and got in trouble because he couldn't keep his pants up. And that's not the guy who he doesn't have anything. He'd been fed stuff his whole life. And without being fed stuff, he's worthless, or she's worthless. I don't care which gender they are. They're still worthless because they've been being fed stuff. I look for the guy who was the one who dug it up. Find me the guy who got fired, or who walked away, or who left because he was principled, because they have sources, they know how to investigate, they know what kind of questions to ask. Exactly. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the person who has sources. I don't care what their personality is. I don't care how well they looked on camera. Those things don't matter to me. What matters is, do they have sources? Do they know where to get the information? Now, I have some sources, but I don't have the level of sources those investigative journalists who've been digging behind the scenes forever have. I follow one person who has been an investigative journalist and was asked to do something that he said violated his integrity, and he walked away from that, created his own network, still has those sources and connections, and can show you the process that he went through in order to get there and where he'd done that in the past. Amazing to find those kinds of people to follow after, because they know what to do. They know how to ask the right questions. They know how to ask the question behind the question. They know how to dig, and they know how to question everything. Those are the kind of people who matter. It's not the guy who used to be on Fox News or CNBC, or I don't care where they come from. Those guys are just, as Don said, talking heads. They don't have any value. The great thing today is that we have a brand new platform upon which people can communicate. And we're watching people who, and listen, the guy I just mentioned a while ago went from no way, not now, not ever, am I ever going to do this, to, hey, I've done the investigation and I've come to this conclusion and I can't do anything other than do this. So I see people who have actually made that transition because they've done the one thing I've said that you should always do, and that is that you should be a seeker, not a student who follows whatever's been given to them. A seeker follows the truth wherever it takes them. A seeker follows the truth wherever it takes them. I've been fascinated by the walk away rallies because that's a group of people. That's a group of people who looked at the facts and they led them somewhere else. And they said, based upon the factual information that I got, and kept questioning until I came to a different conclusion than what I had been told. Those are the people you want to pay attention to, because they're not just talking heads. Those are people who actually know what it means to get to the truth of the matter. All right. I went way longer today than I intended to go. This was going to be really short, but I thought it was important that we talk about facts, because how do I get the right questions? How do I get to the right information? I have to ask the right questions. Doesn't matter what situation that you're in. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Please don't do that with your wife or your husband. Don't keep questioning them, but question everything else. Okay? You'll be a lot happier if you do, because it'll give you the opportunity to let the facts take you where you belong, rather than being moved by emotions of some kind. Thank you for joining me today. I'll look forward to talking to you next week, because I won't be back tomorrow.